Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Rob Cisternino, and I am here with something brand new that I'm doing this season, and it's called my Survivor Burning Question. This is a project that really was inspired for me for something I did at the end of last season. Maybe you saw it. I basically did a video called Hiding in Plain Sight, Oops All Gabler, as I like to call it as well. And I went back and watched everything from Survivor 43, talking all about how Gabler won the game in Survivor 43 and kind of looking for clues to see whether or not there was any way that we could have known that we were headed towards a Gabler victory. And sure enough, there were some interesting clues throughout the course of the season. And I had a lot of fun really going back and doing research into that. And I felt like really invigorated by going back and doing that. And I felt like, boy, this is something that really excites me and also really scares me, and was something that I thought would be a really exciting challenge to try to do on a weekly basis. And so that's where this idea of the Survivor Burning Question of the Week comes from. And so each week I am going to attempt to do a little bit of a deep dive into one particular thing that comes out of Survivor based off of that week's episode. Maybe it's something that might be a little bit more of a historical thing, or maybe it might be something that is a little bit more strategic. Today, for the very first one, it's kind of a little bit of both. And so I want to explore the question of, should survivors ever share a lie in the game of Survivor? And so I'm very excited to do this. I feel like that this is going to be something that I am going to embark on today. That is what I was put on this earth to do. And so I am very excited to be doing it right now. And thank you very much for checking this out. This is a project that I am going to be posting for the patrons as soon as it gets done, most likely on Fridays. They will have the early access to this when I let everybody else hear it when we get closer to the episode on Tuesday night. So if you're watching it early, thank you for your support of Rob Has a Podcast. Let's talk about this birdcage twist, which really was a big deal in this week's episode. And so sort of got introduced, sort of a novel thing, but it had a really big impact on the way that the Survivor premiere ultimately played out, and sort of like the disastrous consequences for this Ratu tribe. Specifically, it created a real rift between Maddy and Brandon, and ultimately caused Maddy to want to take Brandon out of the game, and ultimately made Maddy be the first person voted out of the game. And so there were a lot of things that we didn't know from the episode. My exit interview with Maddy really did color in a lot of those things. Specifically, Maddy wanted to target Matthew, but after everything went sour with Brandon over the idol and him ultimately having an idol, Maddy shifted her sights to Brandon. I had the chance in my exit interview to ask her about this. Maddy told me, so when he found the idol, talking about how her and Brandon were these two alpha personalities. So when he found the idol and tried to dupe me and say he had just found it when he replaced it, and then when he wanted to play it without me, I don't think specifically at the tribal council, but basically like play the game without her, I knew there is no inroads with this dude. So my target goes from Matthew to Brandon. Maddy then says, if you're not with me, you're against me. That's just how I am. Boy, I've heard that before on Survivor. Does it work? Maybe more often than you think, but specifically, I'm thinking Russell, Rob. It comes up a lot in Survivor Heroes versus Villains. Could this all have been avoided for Maddy and for Brandon? And I have to feel like it could have. I mean, ultimately for Maddy, this ends up with her being voted out of the game. For Brandon, he ends up spending like a lot of like social capital. He gets voted for by Kane and by Maddy. He has to play his idol. Ultimately, he is a lot worse off than had him and Maddy been able to come to an agreement of how to get through this. So let's go back and talk a little bit about what happened with the birdcage. I went back and I watched this a bunch of times. Matthew is the person who talks about splitting up into groups. We see Kane go off with Jamie, and it seems like that Maddy was with Brandon and Matthew. I don't know what happens to Matthew. I don't know if he was like off climbing a rock somewhere. He kind of disappears and leaves it to be Maddy and Brandon. Lauren is at Shipwheel Island. Maddy told me in her exit interview that they did this way. Her and Kane split up so they could have eyes on both sets of groups. So it's Brandon and Maddy, and they're walking around, and Brandon, he finds the thing. He's like, oh my God. And then he does like, oh, a big stretch. Just like, cool, but it's not cool. Maddy sees it. He knows he's got something in his pocket. And he's trying to like, change the subject. Is like, he says to her, like, none of them found it. And then she knows that he's acting sus. She's like, I think it's like a team thing. I don't think if anyone found it, they'd keep it a secret. And he's like, I would hope not. But then we get a confessional from Brandon, and he tells us his thinking. If she saw that I found it, she's going to tell everybody that I found it and didn't say anything about it. I don't want to build that distrust with the rest of the tribe. So he eventually says, all right, yo, come here. All right. And he says, I found it. It's right here. We got the key. And she's making like the Janine shocked face and acting like, wait, what do we do? And Brandon asks her, do we tell him? This is the biggest moment of the premiere. Everything changes in this conversation. And he takes a beat and says, yeah, I think we should. Leah, let's tell them. She doesn't even get to finish. And she says, wait, let's talk about this. Now, was this a test from Brandon? And he says to her, only question is, what's in the cage? And Maddy, in confessional, says, in Survivor, you have to think outside of the cage. Maybe the two of us open it up so we know what's in there. And it would be good because then he's more bonded to me. And she says to him, so maybe we could play it off like, and he finishes her sentence, like we never found it. And she says, yeah. And we get a Brandon confessional. And he says, I do want to keep it a secret. But the fact that Maddy was telling me she wanted to keep it a secret made me super nervous. I just knew I can't trust it. And he goes right from that to, yo, we found it. So just the mere suggestion from Maddy suggesting that they like, hey, let's not tell anybody about it. Sort of like instinctually, he's out. He didn't want to work with Maddy. And Maddy says in the confessional, in my mind, it would have been good for me and Brandon to keep the key to ourselves. Sometimes you're at the mercy of other people's moves. And obviously, he doesn't want to work with me. So she's totally turned off now by Brandon after what he did. They're just such different types of players. Maddy talked about that a little bit in the exit interview, that she is a very like aggressive game player. Brandon, going back to the preseason and the questions that Mike Bloom and I got from him, that Brandon got asked by Mike Bloom, how eager will you be to look for advantages in this game? He said, so honestly, initially, I'm not going to be very eager at all. I think that's one of those kisses of death that a lot of people make, and they don't even realize sometimes that they're making it. I mean, when I think of it from a numbers game, depending on how many people are in the tribe, especially starting off, you have a 1 in 6 chance of finding it, which is not great. So I don't feel like the risk necessarily outweighs the reward early in the game. And he's talking specifically about looking for the idols, but you get like a little bit of a window into like how like conservative, like safe. I don't want anything that's going to attract attention to me. And I think that also a miscalculation from Brandon is that I don't think it really dawned on him that this was going to be a hidden immunity idol. We see him at Tribal Council. He says, let's also keep in mind, there's some question about like, is it Brandon's idol? Does he have possession of it? And he does say that it's my idol, but then he also volunteers. Let's also keep in mind that we didn't know it was an immunity idol in there. I was trying to, build the trust in my tribe mates. And it turns out it was a target painted on my back, So I don't know what he thought it might have been, but it's he might have thought it was like some sort of like tribe benefit, or I don't know, like a clue to something else or something that would have made him a more valued member of the tribe. Like, I don't think that he went out there looking for this thing for this personal gain. And he ends up like bringing everybody in, not just I found it, but hey, everybody, I'm going to open up this immunity idol. And I do think that the show itself was trying to tell us that he had made a critical mistake as well. Because I went back and I watched this, and I noticed something interesting. I want to play this clip from the episode. Here's Brandon about to open up the clip. I'm going to raise this volume a little bit here so you can hear. Okay, so here's him opening the immunity idol.
Congratulations, you have found a hidden immunity idol. When played at tribal council.
Did you catch that little subtle like gong chime? Am I crazy, or is that basically like the Amazing Race like mistake noise that you make? Like I don't notice that a lot in Survivor, but I listen again. I feel like the edit is telling us, yeah, this is a mistake what he's doing right here.
Congratulations, you have found a hidden immunity idol.
When played at tribal council. Interesting, right? Anyway, so. I think that for Brandon, I think he thought he was getting something that was going to ultimately be for the tribe. Like, he's doing that to try to like set up trust with everybody. He even has a confessional afterwards and says that he, thinks he made a mistake. Now he has a target on his back. This was, he says, I just messed up. I just put the biggest target on my back without realizing it. Now it's public knowledge. I have an idol that scares people. I should have kept this a secret. So after the fact, he realizes like this was not what I wanted to do. He also like alienates Maddy in the process now, and is also seen as somebody who has an idol. So for Maddy and Brandon, could they both have changed their prospects in the game by sharing a lie? All right. The phrase sharing a lie for Survivor fans brings us back to one place, and that's Survivor Worlds Apart. And Survivor Worlds Apart started off with a twist in its premiere episode. And in Survivor Worlds Apart, the Survivor contestants, they got to pick one person from the group. And this is a little similar to what happened in the opening of Survivor Cagayan. And you picked one person, and that person, I think, then also picked one person, and they got to go make a decision for the group. And so each of the three tribes, and again, similarly, 3-tribe season, people faced with some sort of a dilemma, and you had the choice to be honest or deceive. Okay. You had one of two choices. Okay. And the idea was, and Jeff talked about this a lot in the preseason. Jeff was saying how this is one of his favorite seasons, Worlds Apart. Honest or deceive. If you choose to deceive, you'd get a small bag of beans to take back to your tribe. This is from the tree mail that they got on the thing. This will only last a few days, but you will also be given a clue to the hidden immunity idol. Then, if you wanted to grab honest, if you choose honest, you will earn a large bag of beans for your tribe. This is a huge advantage. It also shows that you can be trusted and earn early favoritism. We saw 3 pairs of people have to be forced with the decision to potentially share the lie. It was Jen Brown and Will Sims for the No Collar Tribe. They immediately chose be honest. And did it help foster a bond? Not so much. I mean, they were together for a couple of votes. Eventually, Will flips away from the No Collar Tribe. At the Blue Collar Tribe, it's Mike Holloway and Dan Foley, and they have the same choice. And Mike Holloway is a little bit like, oh, do we do it? Do we do it? And Dan Foley is like, villains win this game. But then he's like, no. We gotta be honest. But it's like Mike Holloway is like a little bit, I don't know, which is interesting. You know, I always think about Mike as being like his like Achilles heel is that he's like, so impulsive, can't not, eat a scorpion or, take a letter at the auction. Like he wants to make one of these big moves. Dan Foley talks about it on day one, and they do have a good relationship for the first half of the game. But over on the white collar tribe. That's where all the action is here with the famous honest or deceive, also known as the neutral box twist. And so Joaquin is the person with So Kim. And he says, honestly, I know what we're doing. We're taking that one. Okay. He says, the question is, what are we going to tell them? And it really is going to come down to what is the lie going to be? And what do they ultimately arrive on? They come back carrying a small bag of beans and they're forced to say, okay, here's the cover story. They say that they are here to they chose the neutral box. Okay, there was 3 boxes. Okay, one said honest, one said deceive, and one said neutral. And they claimed that the honest and deceive boxes came with caveats. And so they just said, "Well, we're just gonna take neutral." We're like, I don't know what the caveat would have been to select the honest box, but nobody's buying it. Mama C is no way, baby. She's not buying it at all. Max and Sharon, they're not buying it at all. Kind of like bonds the whole group against them. For Joaquin and So, yeah, I think I mean, they were sort of bonded from that point on. It was like everybody against them, but sharing a lie did not necessarily help them in their game. That's a bad lie. Of course, famously, if Australian Survivor 2016, spoilers incoming, friend of the podcast, you can catch him talking about the premiere episode this week. Maybe he'll talk about sharing the lie. Nick Idanza was also a victim of having to share a lie, and he tried to improve on what Joaquin and So did. That he was offered that same option to share the lie with Tegan back in Australian Survivor 2016. He kind of talks her into it. She's like, I don't know. And they do it, and they ultimately go back and they read a made up idle clue to the rest of the tribe. It's not going well. A bunch of people are like, the BS alarm was going off for people, and it was not something that worked for Nick.
In Survivor, it's hard to lie. As our friend Omer said, hey, if I'm going to tell a lie, I'm going to tell a good lie. Okay. And it's hard for one person to come up with a good lie. It is exceedingly difficult for 2 players to come up with a good lie. And I think Survivor knows this because in the new era and in all of these seasons that we see where there's so much information being exchanged, that's kind of the idea. I want to bring in something. I listened to the brand new official Survivor podcast, On Fire with Jeff Probst, the Jeff Probst podcast. And you got a real window. Of course, there's a lot of cool production stuff that gets revealed on that, but you get a window into the kinds of stuff that interests Jeff. And he talked about how he really likes to watch interrogations on YouTube. And then also he's very interested in negotiations, but he's sort of like reveal like how that ties into the show. And I want to play a clip from On Fire with Jeff Probst talking about the ways that Jeff is thinking about these things and how they are going to be on the show. We can't hear. Actually, we get a little closer to the microphone. Okay, hold on. Let's hear from Jeff himself.
Man. Well, yeah, I spend a lot of time. Okay, this is equally ridiculous, but I create these scenarios in my head and I role play. Like I will write out a script of what might happen, or I'll be in my car and I'll literally talk to myself. And it sounds absurd, but I'm looking for a new way in to a situation. So if I had an idea, I might literally say, hey, Bill, what is that in your hand? What do you mean? I saw you put something in your pants. What are you talking about? I just keep doing it until I stumble upon the moment of turning point. And I go, oh, that's what we got to get to right there. If we can find that moment, then it doesn't matter who finds the advantage and who knows about it. We will have some decision that has to be made. You're looking at me like none of this makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. I'm just wondering if you're sitting.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Jeff. The whole show is really about entrapment and trying to get people lying, get people caught, and then see what happens. Like, I think that that's really, from a creative standpoint, a lot of what they're going for in the new era. And so when we create stuff like this bird cage, it's there to get people caught lying about what they're doing there. And so for Brandon, like, I think that it was a situation where he panicked because he didn't want to be one of these people that's caught sharing a lie, because it's so easy to get busted in the new era. But what can you do then in the game of Survivor? And maybe that the lies that you can share are the lies of omission, also known as secrets, because secrets, I think, are one of the most powerful things that Survivor players have. Think of the things that a couple players might know about, but others don't. You're not lying because you're not even being asked about it. You don't even have to tell other people the details. It's just something that you and another person know and the other players don't. Think about things like the formation of the Exile Alliance in Tocantins. It could have been something, or all the times that people found idols together, and that was the thing that ended up bringing two players closer together, like Natalie and Baylor in San Juan del Sur. We saw this in Survivor 40 as well, where you got an idol, and then to activate the idol, you had to hand it to another person. Even Ben and Denise found the idol together, and Ben and Denise, while it didn't really have huge game ramifications, they ended up having like a really close relationship on Winners at War. Denise went to Adam and brought Adam in, and ultimately that helped solidify their relationship. I mean, even, Denise and Malcolm together knew about an idol together that others didn't have to know about. Also in Winners at War, a great example, I think, is Kim and Sophie. Now, Kim is on the bottom in Winners at War, and she finds half of the idol and she shares it with Sophie. And Sophie gives a confessional. She's like, Kim, this was a bad idea. You should not have told me about this. But Kim did it. And they kind of had a good relationship from that point on. So sharing secrets is great, but in the new era, be wary, okay? Secrets are something that can be great for helping you build your alliance. I mean, look at some of the things that we saw last season with the beads, where we saw Cody ended up bringing in NECA and Jesse to help him activate his idol, and ultimately for Jesse and Cody, this became a great secret that really helped bond them and foster this great relationship throughout the game. But the double-edged sword to these secrets is that they also can be used against you down the line. So share a secret with a friend and use it to build your alliance, but be wary, because just like when Carla told Cassidy that she had the idol, and then also Jesse knew about Cody's idol, these things can and will be used against you down the road. So if it's trust that you're looking to build, a secret is a better way to go than to share a lie. So to bring it all back to where we started with this, back to Maddy and Brandon, how could both of them have changed their fates in the game had they handled this differently? Maybe by sharing a secret instead of being worried about sharing a lie. Maybe when Maddy says, can we play it off like, and Brandon says, like, we never found it. And Maddy says, yeah. And Brandon says, okay, great. We won't, let's not tell anybody about this, because again, what Brandon cares about is building trust. And he was very worried about the other players turning against him. Can I trust Maddy? Is she going to say anything to anybody else? But just like when anybody asks you, hey, do you want to be in an alliance? The answer is always yes. And when people are asking you, like, do you want to share this secret? The answer is yes. You just can avoid telling a sloppy lie around it. And I know for Brandon, that made him very uncomfortable, but ultimately it created a lot of distrust with Maddy. If that's what he was worried about, of, okay, well, Maddy is going to create all these problems for me if she knows this lie about me, by alienating her, by not going along with what she wants to do, ultimately created those same problems where she conspired against him to get him out. And if not for a mistake on Maddy's part of saying something to Matthew, Brandon might have been blindsided out of the game with an idol. Instead, he moves forward, wounded in, literally and figuratively, and without an idol in the game. And it didn't have to be that way if he would have been willing to share a secret. One of the things I started doing last season that I want to incorporate into the burning question is also what I expect to see on Survivor this week. This is where I'm going to take everything that we learned from the episode and in some of the podcast discussion that we've had and the exit interviews and sort of, okay, let's start to think ahead into what we're going to see on Wednesday night. And I love to do this with the help of some visual aids. And so I have once again created some PowerPoint presentations. We're going full Kornacki once again. And so let's go ahead and bring in the three tribes, and I'll give you a sense of who I think might be the next player to go out of the game. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's start with the Tikka Tribe. All right, now we saw the other night that Bruce ultimately ended up being medically evacuated from the game. Very sad to see. All right, so let's talk about what is going on at this tribe, because we did get to see a little bit of strategic talk, and that was with Helen and Carson and Sarah saying that they wanted to work together. Okay, so I have those three together as a group who is working together in the early days here at Tikka. And then Jam Jam, I think, had a fantastic premiere to the show, but we didn't really see Jam Jam involved in those strategic conversations. That being said, I feel like that Jam Jam also would be safe. I mean, we saw him start the fire. He seems like he has his feet under him. He feels like he is not going anywhere. So it makes me very sad to say, I feel like if Tikka goes to a tribal council, my winner pick for the season, Carolyn, I think is in trouble. This cannot happen where Carolyn gets voted out here in the second episode. She's too good on the show. So Tikka has to just keep rolling and win immunity. All right. If they go to tribal council, I think Carolyn's in a lot of trouble. Also, I like to keep track of the advantages. Sarah has the inheritance advantage. There's nothing to inherit here, so I don't think that it is going to be something that is going to be especially useful at this point in the game, although their bird cage is still yet to be open. So we'll see if anything happens there in episode number 2. Also, we got the Soka tribe. Okay. Soka, we also saw a little bit from a few players, and then there's a few other players that are question marks. We saw a fair amount from Claire and Franny and Matt, and it looks like that maybe that Franny and Matt have a bit of a special bond so far. We saw Heidi also making the fire. We did not see as much from Danny or from Josh. We really have no way of knowing of what is going to happen with this group. I feel like that based off of what we've seen, I feel like that Danny and Josh seem the most disconnected, but we probably saw the least from Soka in the premiere in terms of what's going on. So hard to get a good read there. Let's go to the tribe, though, that we do have a pretty good read on. And it is an utter mess over at the new Ratu Tribe. Ratu? It might be Ratu at this point. Okay. They lost Maddy the other night. And so we also have some other big factors here with this group. Now, they got to sit out Matthew in the immunity challenge in the last episode. Okay.
they will not have that luxury again. And so while it worked out fine, while they had 6 and then they got to sit somebody out of the challenge because Bruce was missing, now Matthew has to be in the immunity challenge. His arm is still in a sling. I don't think that he can use that shoulder while they do have Brandon, who is a powerhouse, although a depleted powerhouse based off of what we saw in that last episode. We also have Kane, who seems like a pretty strong guy that, this is going, I think that they are due to go to another tribal council. I think this could be like a complete disaster tribe at this point. And I am very concerned about them going to another tribal council. Now, how do things shape up after that chaotic tribal that they had the other night where Kane voted for Brandon, Matthew and Jamie played their shot in the dark, Lauren didn't vote, so a majority of this group didn't even cast a vote at the last tribal council, and the 2 people that did, we saw where Kane voted for Brandon and Brandon voted for Kane's best ally. So where do we go from here? I don't know. I wonder if maybe there could be a little bit of a reset based off of my exit interview with Maddy. The episode made it seem like, oh, Jamie is just being super paranoid and is playing the shot in the dark for no reason. It was not for no reason. People were talking about voting out Jamie from the, she wasn't just being paranoid. Her name was being floated about. I wonder if Kane can do some damage control, if they could potentially, especially if Matthew is not able to be, participating at a high level in the challenges, for them to vote Kane out, I think would be a very bad strategic decision. I think that my money would be on Jamie being the person who ends up getting voted out. She doesn't have a shot in the dark here, so you're not worried about that. Also, don't forget, Lauren has the extra vote now that she banked from her trip to Shipwheel Island. So she does have 2 votes. So she could potentially do some interesting things. And also, we have to watch to see if maybe an idol gets rehidden at the Ratu camp. But my pick for the second player voted out of the game is going to be Jamie. Okay, so we will see what goes on when we get back to our newest Survivor episode coming up on Wednesday night. I do want to thank the amazing patron community for helping to make this and all of RHAP possible. Thank you so much to all of our patrons around the world. We are going 9 years strong with our Rob is a Podcast patrons. And so thank you for helping us build the greatest reality TV community in the world. One of the things I've wanted to do for a long time is a shout out the newest members of our community. And so I thought this might be a fun spot to say a special hello and thank you to the newest members of our patron community. And let me do so here. And if I may, I'd like to continue doing this in this spot. And so let me go ahead and do it. And maybe Jeff can come in and help out with this. Okay. So let's give a big thanks to Gary Kevin, Molly M, Kirsten Y, Aaron, Philip M, Tim, KU, Sydney L, Jamie S, Wendy is a Fish, Cynthia H, Ashley, Sarah A, Sophie Berdinsky. She wants me and Steven to wear a shirt. We said we would do it. Kara H, Shauna H, Sarah L, Aubrey F, Taylor C, Matt O, Patty D, Jeff E, ES, Amanda, Cameron W, Sarah P, Julian, Justin, Becky R, Brian E, Haj, Potter. Big thanks to Michelle C, Katie W, Lauren M, Charlotte, Amanda T, Good Guy, Maggie M, Nick C, Dina, Erica W, RJ, Kate Z, Adam K, Maggie B, Laura H, Hang Tai, Ash Ray, Lucas, welcome back to JM, Brant S, Nicole B, Phil S, Morgan U, Leah W, Hatrick, Caleb with a K, Denise C, Diane M, Melissa G, Kevin L, Charles T, Chris, and Sophia A. And if I forgot you, please let me know on Twitter. I'm at Rob Cisternino. I had so much fun getting to do this today. I really hope that you enjoyed this type of content. I don't know if we will go as long each week, but I have a really fun time getting to do all of this research and come on here and be able to hopefully speak intelligently about one specific subject. So, would love to hear your feedback here in the comments, on Twitter, in the Facebook group. And of course, thank you so much for checking out this type of content here on Rob Is a Podcast. Appreciate you. Have a great week and enjoy another week of a fun season of Survivor. Take care. Bye.